Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Here are some settings on your Mac that you should check to make it more secure. MACMOST is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 2,000 supporters. Go to MACMOST.com/Patreon. There you could read more about it, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. Now, if you want to make sure your Mac is secure, you should take a few minutes to check these settings. Now, I did a video like this a few years ago, but a lot of things have changed, especially the transition from system preferences to system settings. So here I'm going to show you how to do it in macOS Sonoma and beyond. Some of these are important, others are less so. So it's up to you to decide which ones that you set. But I would say the first one is not optional. You should have a password set for your Mac. I'm amazed that some users still don't do this. So in system settings, if you go down to login password, this is where you can set your password. And you can see I've got it set here. But you shouldn't just set it. You should make sure it's a good password. As a general rule, if the word appears in the dictionary, so it's just a regular word, or it's a name, then it's not a strong password. It should be a fairly random set of letters and numbers. You're going to type it a lot, so I understand not wanting to make it 27 characters long, completely random with symbols, but it should be something that nobody could possibly guess. And I recommend not setting any kind of password hint, but of course, make sure that you write this password down somewhere and store it in a safe place so in case you forget it, you have a backup. And of course, it's even more important for you to have a strong password for your Apple ID. There you shouldn't compromise and only have a completely random password because your Apple ID, unlike your Mac, can be accessed from anywhere in the world. So it should have a strong password, and of course, you should be using the two-factor authentication that Apple provides. It's really hard to actually have an Apple ID that's set up without those right now, and that's good. Now that you've got a good password set in your Mac, the next thing to do is to go to the lock screen settings. And here is where you'll find require password after screensaver begins or display is turned off. So if you've got this set to something long, like say 1 hour, well, that means somebody who gets access to your Mac less than an hour after you've used it can get on without needing the password. You should at the very least have it set down to 5 minutes, maybe for a Mac that's in a secure location like your home, where only people you trust could actually get access to it. But if it's a MacBook, something that could be in public, then you don't want to go any longer than 5 seconds. 5 seconds is pretty handy for when you see your Mac has gone to sleep and you want to quickly hit the space bar to wake it up again. Otherwise, if you set it to immediately, then you'll always have to enter your password. So either have it set to immediately or 5 seconds for a MacBook. And then don't go any longer than 5 minutes, even if the Mac is in a secure location. Now right here, you also have another interesting security setting that you could use if you like. Show message when locked. So you can turn this on and then you could set this message. So you could set something that appears on the lock screen. So you could put contact information there, an email address or a phone number, because it's not always the case that if you lost your MacBook that it's been stolen and you'll never see it again. Sometimes somebody may find it and want to get it back to you. It'll be handy to have a message on the lock screen that tells them how. Next, let's go into the privacy and security section here and go all the way down to the bottom. And here you've got a security setting for allow applications downloaded from. And you could set this to either the App Store only or App Store and identify developers. Now, if you have it set to the second one, that means you can download apps from the internet, and as long as they're signed with a certificate from Apple, you can install them. Both of these are pretty good security options. But if you rarely download something from the internet, then switch to App Store only. You might as well provide that extra layer of security. Remember, you could always go in here and switch this to the other one if you need to download a piece of software from a website. So it's not like you've locked yourself out completely from downloading other apps. But it does give you another step, a few seconds to have to pause and think about downloading an app from somewhere outside the App Store. Now right under here, you're also going to see FileVault. So having FileVault on is a good idea. Now all the most recent Macs, the last Intel Macs that had a T2 security chip and all of the M1, M2, and M3 Macs, they all have encrypted data on the drive already. So if you were worried about turning FileVault on and having it encrypt everything or slow things down, it's not going to do that at all. What FileVault will do is make sure that somebody can't access the data on your drive without logging into your Mac first. So taking your Mac and using it in something like target disk mode won't allow them to get to your data. Now let's take a look at file sharing. So that's under General, and then you want to go to Sharing. And you can see here I've got file sharing turned on. I've got my Mac on a private network in my own home. But my MacBook usually doesn't have this turned on. I rarely need to use old-fashioned file sharing using AirDrop or iCloud to share files between my machines. But if I did need to turn it on, I would just turn it on when I needed it. The problem is that if you have this turned on and you go to a public network, like say one at a conference center, school, work, or hotel, other people can see your Mac on the network. And that's not a good idea from a security standpoint. There's no immediate threat because it follows these rules here of what people can access. But it's just a good idea to have it turned off so people don't see you at all. Let's go next to Siri and Spotlight. So if you've got Listen For turned on, then you've got the ability to allow Siri when locked. So if you're on the lock screen, then you can do certain things with Siri. Now, there's no real immediate threat to that, but I find it just to be a good idea from a security standpoint to not allow Siri when your Mac is locked. In the past, there have definitely been some things that people have figured out that can be done on an iPhone, iPad, or Mac using Siri when it's locked. So just have that turned off. Now let's go to the network settings and let's go into Wi-Fi. So if you're in here, you could see the networks that you've connected to in the past, known networks. If you look at these, you'll notice auto join either checked or not checked. So what you want to do is if the network is one of your networks, it's something in your home, then that's fine. Have it auto join. The same thing at work and school and the places you regularly go. But if you connect to a network, say at a cafe or hotel or someplace like that, then it will be shown under known networks since you've entered in the password. And you want it to remain there because you don't want to have to enter in the password each time. But you do want to make sure that auto join is turned off. So in other words, it won't automatically join the network. You'd have to go into your Wi-Fi settings and select it instead. This prevents you from being on maybe a different network than the one that you think. Or having, say, your mail app or some other app automatically start doing things on the internet, even if you're someplace like a cafe where you didn't actually intend to log into the network. For the next one, I'm going to go to Safari. And in Safari settings, you go to General, and then there's a checkbox here for Open Save Files after downloading. Now, save files really only applies to things like videos, pictures, stuff like that. So you download an image and it will go to the Downloads folder and open it up so you can view it. Now, I find this a little annoying. A lot of times I just want to download the content and not necessarily switch apps to view it right now. But also in the distant past, there were issues with malware getting onto your Mac this way. There's no current threat like that, and there hasn't been for a long time. But I don't see the need to actually risk that by having this checked. So I leave it off. It's really easy to just go to the Downloads folder or click on the Downloads button at the top right and open that content after you download it anyway. And while we're here in Safari settings, also go to Websites and then go to the Notification section here. Here you're going to see a list of websites where you may have accidentally granted permission for it to show you notifications. This is a common attack vector for scams and malware. You go to some random website that's a search result and it really quickly hits you with permission to send you notifications. And maybe you accidentally say, okay. Now it will send you notifications, not right then, but sometime later. And the notification looks like it's like a warning or that you have malware or that you need to call tech support or something like that. When that happens, people sometimes think they have malware installed, but all it is they've gone to a website, given it permission to send them notifications, and now it's sending them a notification that is misleading, right? So check in here every once in a while. Make sure that you only allow notifications per website where you really want it to. And also what I like to do is uncheck allow websites to ask permission to send notifications. That way, these websites can't actually trick you into allowing notifications. Some of them will actually still ask you, but it's not the official ask for the browser. It's a step before that. So even if you accidentally say, okay, the next step, actually allowing notifications, won't show up because you have this unchecked. So let's get back to system settings and look at a really important one. Under General, there's Software Update. And for best security, under Automatic Update, you should have all of these checked. This will automatically install system updates. Now, I know some people say, well, I don't want to install system updates until it's been a few days later or people tell me it's okay. But a lot of that dates back to the earlier days of macOS where there wasn't public beta testing. Now there is, and tons of regular users test out macOS before it comes out. So installing it right away doesn't mean you're one of the first people to get the system update outside of Apple. Not at all. That's a thing of the past. But turning these on, make sure that you get security updates at all sorts of different levels right away. An important one is actually install application updates from the App Store, because security problems don't just happen with the system. They commonly happen with apps that you have installed. Apps that may have parts running in the background even. So you want to make sure all your apps are up to date as well as macOS. Also here under General, you've got your settings for Time Machine. Now notice here I have a Time Machine drive and it says it's encrypted. If yours isn't encrypted, that means somebody could steal your Time Machine drive and actually have access to all of your files. So your Mac's already encrypted and hopefully you have FileVault turned on like I showed before, but then your Time Machine backup is completely unencrypted. If you don't see it as encrypted, then you seriously want to consider at some point soon restarting your Time Machine backups. In other words, erasing the drive and starting from scratch with encryption checked. Another thing you may want to consider if security is a primary concern for you is setting a firmware password on your Mac. This will prevent somebody from booting your Mac up using an external drive. So the instructions for doing so involve actually booting into macOS recovery mode, which is hard to show here. But here's the page that Apple has that walks you through it. Now, if you do lose or somebody steals your Mac, you do want to be able to track it and take action remotely. You can only do that if in advance you turned on Find My Mac. So you do that by going to your Apple ID here at the top of Settings and then going to iCloud. And then where it shows apps using iCloud, click on Show More Apps. And here you'll find Find My Mac. Now you'll see it turned off here because this is my second user account on the Mac. It's only turned on for one user account. So my main user account has this turned on. And in addition to that, there's a second option on newer Macs to actually have it send you the location even if the Mac is powered off. So now you can use the Find My app on an iPhone, an iPad, or another Mac. And you can locate your device, which show you on a map. But also you can do other things like, for instance, you can mark it as lost and erase it remotely, protecting your data if you know it's been stolen. So there are a whole bunch of different suggestions for ways to make your Mac more secure. Hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.